Even the most prolific and respectable design houses don't always get it right. In fact, they sometimes have duds. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and when we come back, I'm going to go over 5 fragrances or 5 situations where I felt like maybe they should have done nothing instead of going ahead and releasing the fragrance to the general public. When we come back, we'll have that and more, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. So today we're talking about 5 fragrances that I'm not super impressed with, yet come from houses that I really respect, that have a really good track record releasing quality offerings for men. Just like every musician, every game developer, anyone who's ever produced a good or a product has discovered they can't always be hits. In fact, I'm positive that there are many fragrance houses out there that know exactly what regret feels like. So let's go ahead and jump right into our 5 less than impressive fragrances. Time hasn't been great to a lot of fragrances, but I still feel like even when it was released back in 1997, this fragrance wasn't that great. It is from the house of Fujiyama. It is Fujiyama Private Number. Should be Fujiyama Unlisted Number or Wrong Number. Supposed to be a classic fougere for men with nutmeg in it, got a little bit of leather, oak moss, of course, oak moss, amber, musk, and vanilla. So how could you go wrong with those kind of notes? Well, honestly, I have memories of my father coming home after a long day of work, taking off his work boots and throwing them in the closet, where I actually would play as a kid, and the smell sometimes would be very much like Wrong Number, a Private Number. So what could you use instead of Fujiyama Private Number? I recommend Fujiyama Gentleman. Fujiyama Gentleman has some similarities with Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Male. It's got a nice, unique, fresh, gentlemanly quality about it that is definitely better than Private Number. Our next fragrance is from a house that I have come to respect. It is Michael Malul, and it is an independent house. Admittedly, this is not a designer house, so that wasn't a mistake on my part. I knew that I was including a indie, or you could call it independent, but we'll just say niche. As a niche fragrance, they're close to being designer in some of their offerings, and in this particular offering, I think it was meant to be an Aventus-like fragrance. But to me, when I smell Citizen Jack Absolute by Michael Malul, when I first tried this on, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Aquanetta my mother used to use back in the 70s, or really any kind of like feminine. There's just something about, where it's got loads of pineapple in it. That pineapple is sweet. I just feel like for the price that you pay for this, which is upwards of 75 plus bucks, that you could get something that's a little bit more unique and that doesn't necessarily like cut off your breath. Pretty powerful stuff, but not the best in my book. Michael Malul's Citizen Jack Absolute. I know I'm probably stepping on some toes out there. Some people really like this. And for those of you that it works on your skin, more power to you. Doesn't work on my skin, though I do like the bottle. It's kind of cool. So what could you use instead of Michael Malul's Citizen Jack Absolute? Well, this one isn't quite as powerful. Dunhill Desire Gold is kind of Dunhill's Aventus twist. It's got a nice sweet pineapple, has a little bit of that smoky birch feel to it that is Aventus-like, and it's just an overall decent Aventus clone or pleasant fragrance in and of itself. And I would recommend something like that as opposed to kind of the feminine hair product smell. Another fragrance from a house that I really respect, the house itself being Hugo Boss. I own a ton of fragrances from Hugo Boss, many of which are standards for men's fragrance, for date night fragrances, for all-around masculine go-getters and bangers. However, the new release, Hugo Man, that came out this year, 2021, is literally just Hugo Extreme. I guarantee you that if you smell them one right after the other, you could swear you're smelling the same thing. And when you look at the formula itself, you know, you've got pine, fir balsam, lavender. I mean, they really pretty much have the same thing in them. So even the formula doesn't vary enough to recommend the release. So I think what happened is there's a lot of pressure on bigger houses like Hugo Boss to keep producing something new and unique. So they just took the old formula and said, well, let's just produce something and we'll call it Hugo Man, and it'll be our new flagship fragrance. Maybe a good idea, bad execution. If you're interested in seeing what that smells like, literally just get Hugo Extreme. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. In that case, they fell side by side. Another fragrance house which has released some pretty decent fragrances, but one I think is not that great and actually happens to be their flagship fragrance, is UDV, or Ulric de Vernis, it's called, and they're Ulric de Vernis for men. This fragrance, I just don't know much about why it was made. This fragrance was created in 1993, and while again, I'm not knocking fragrances for being old, that is not the reason that it's in this list. The reason that it's in this list, that it's just a very nondescript kind of fragrance for men. If Ulric de Veren's for men was an artist's rendition of a criminal, this is what it would look like. No delineation, no clear marks or differences. This is that droll and boring, literally just a terrible skin scent. So what can you get instead of that? Well, from the same house, Ulric de Veren's for Men Star is actually a really nice, pleasant, manly, masculine fragrance that is a little bit more, a lot more unique than UDV for men. So recommend trying that one out instead. Our fifth and last fragrance that we're going to take a look at from a house that I respect, but the fragrance itself I'm not at all impressed by, is the house of Bentley. A wonderful little house. They obviously produce luxury cars. Their luxury line of fragrances are also very good. The one that I'm not particularly impressed with is Bentley Azure. It should be called Bentley Are You Sure? Because it isn't really sure. It's a massively boring generic skin scent, in my estimation. Bentley Azure was released in 2016, trying to be a blue fragrance, and for just a few moments after you spray it on your skin, it succeeds and you're like, oh, this is gonna be nice. And it is completely gone. It's got lemon, pineapple, bergamot, tangerine, all in the open there. It's got paprika tea, I think. It's got lavender, clary sage, some other spices, and in the base, got a really nice mix of cashmere wood, tonka bean, and orchinox that you would think would make a nice, long-lasting, or at least mediocre or average-lasting fragrance. Not at all what you get in Bentley Azure. It's just a very watered-down, lightly masculine fragrance. The reason that I am not at all impressed with it is because Bentley has made so many more good fragrances that are of the same price. This is a very inexpensive Bentley fragrance, but they make some other fragrances such as Bentley Silver Lake for men. And admittedly, this is an eau de parfum, this is an eau de toilette, but that doesn't factor in really why they're different. This one is a much higher quality fragrance, a much more effective aquatic fragrance than is Bentley Azure. It's actually a much bluer fragrance than Bentley Azure is as well. So if you really want to get a good Bentley fragrance that will last a while, you'll get some good use out of it, especially this summer, a good high heat fragrance, Bentley Silver Lake for me. But guys, that's a wrap on my brief look at 5 fragrances from houses that I respect, but the fragrances themselves, I'm not at all impressed by. I'm sure there are many more, so let me know in the comments below what fragrances you feel aren't that great or are dud releases from fragrance houses that you respect or that you like or that you use. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. As always, thank you so much for your support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow.